Hi everyone and welcome back to the third half. Today's guest is someone I grew up watching from the stands and on TV. Bryan Redpath is a player whose leadership and clarity on the pitch made a real impression on anybody who has followed Scottish rugby. But this conversation isn't just about rugby memories. Bryan opens up about reinvention, the transition from international sport to coaching to business, and what real grounded leadership looks like when the pressure is absolutely full on. We get stories about working with the great Jim Telfer, reflections on his dad's influence, and some brilliant honesty about instinct, craft and graft, the things that don't show up on any spreadsheet. And there's a side to Bryan many won't know, advising entrepreneurs, bringing all that experience into a completely new arena. Hey, not bad for a joiner fae the borders. It's thoughtful, funny, and full of the kind of insight you only get from a life lived at full tilt. Let's scrum down. You see what I did there?
Bryan Redpath, welcome to the third half. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good, Scott. Great to be here and great to catch up with you and have a good chat. And obviously we can have a good blather today and share a few stories.
A good blather. I love that. I love getting a Scotsman on. I will have a wee blather. Do you know, it's funny, I kind of interviewed a guy, Steve O'Donnell, the other week, who's a CIO from the industry, and he's a Ned. He's quite a big cheese, and he's a Scotsman, and he's very involved in the Scottish Business Network stuff. And my wife was actually listening into the podcast, and then she listened into it later, and she said, it was really funny because the longer I went on, the more Scottish you became. And she said, you just got to be careful though, because you'll start using words that nobody will understand.
That is true. You know, me coming out of coaching in 2018 and going into the business world, I've been away from Scotland for 20 odd years, but you do slow down, you do pronounce everything a little bit clearer. And there is times where you have a couple of beers and you slip straight back into some border language. Oh, I can't do that. And, what do you mean? Do you know what I mean? And it changes the conversation, and then people start imitating you. And I was on the train the other day, and there was a woman and two women stood in front of me, and then they were like, "Oh, aye," and I was like, "Oh, I can tell." So it's quite fun.
And I know we were just talking off air there about your dad. See when you phone up your dad and then you turn around and you talk to the family or somebody local and they just like, nah, mate, you've got to just bring it down a couple of levels.
100%. And Cameron, all the kids, you know, we as I say, we moved Scotland in '99, and you know, grandparents are still in, you know, Edinburgh and the borders, and my dad and kids have always struggled to understand him, really, because he speaks a bit quicker and everything's slang. And Cameron phoned me and said, "Oh, yeah, Papa phoned the other night and just last night for a blether." And I was like, "Oh, all right." I said, "What was he saying?" He said, "I don't know, but I heard something about me diving." He says, "When I scored the try once and he didn't like it." And then I heard them saying something about shepherd's pie that Cam was making for his dinner or something. And he says, "But it's great fun." And I put it on speakerphone and his girlfriend couldn't understand the words. So it's great that they still have a wee connection, and we all try and we understand obviously that, you know, we've travelled around a bit more than what the mums and dads have. But yeah, it's always funny when the old school Scottish accent comes out. And
got to be true to your roots though, man.
It's like you can't forget where you're from.
Absolutely. So Bryan, I'm going to hand the mic to you for 30 seconds, and then I thought, I mean, you know, we've chatted a bit in preparation for this, and I know your career and I know a lot of the things you've been doing, but why don't you just spend 30 seconds to a minute and just explain to our listeners what you have been up to and what you're up to now?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, Scott, I was very fortunate growing up in the borders in Scotland. You know, I left school at 15. I was a joiner for 8 years, playing for Melrose and Kelso High School, but playing for Melrose with amongst many other current international players. And I was a youngster coming through, and Jim Telfer as a coach, and fortunate enough to play for Melrose for the south of Scotland, then to play for Scotland. And you know, in that time, I was fortunate to play 10 years, 60 caps, 3 World Cups, and at the end of it, turned professional after in '96 till 2005. That's when I moved to France, and then on after that to Sale Sharks. And you know, I just still can't see how lucky I have been. You know, and people always say, "Oh, you know, what's the best thing you've ever done?" Is, well, playing rugby. There's nothing that's ever got close to it. And then I'd probably say being a joiner was close to it, because coaching was a real challenge. When I retired in '05, I went on to coach Gloucester for 7 years and Sale and Leeds. And, that was a real challenge, having a different challenge attached to you again, because you can't control so much, but you can control so little. And then in 2018, I made probably a bigger decision to come out the game. I had an approach from a company which was called Afex at the time, and they're now called Corpay, and they're in the foreign currency markets for transfers, FX transfers for businesses mainly. They were really interested in how sports people transfer money around with image rights, commercial rights, contracts. How do footballers, rugby players, cricketers, motor racing, golfers, how do they move money around? And they're inevitably attached to a sponsor or a business. And then you looked at that, and I made a big decision. I was living in Cheshire, and they had an office in Manchester, and they said, look, would you love to set up a sporting environment for us to look at, and then how we would grow that out to a wider network in Scotland. And over the last 7 or 8 years, there's been little challenges, there's no question, in that. And then just recently, I've moved more to work independently with 2 different brokers or 3 different brokers, and ultimately try and keep my connections with people, keep my network, and keep them at the forefront of everything I do. Whereas, you can't get caught up in a big establishment where you are just another pea in the pod, and not necessarily. I'm too old to be cold calling and chasing around different things. So it's more of, if I get a client that wants to trade money or trade currency for his business, then I can help him and compete against other brokers and banks. And ultimately, that's what I'm doing now. I still have some part-time stuff which I do with London Scottish and the Championship. So I've been really fortunate, very diverse in terms of leaving school on the Monday, a joiner on the Tuesday, professional coach and a player, and then having a bit of just using my experiences in my life over the last 30 odd years to take me some different routes, and some successful and some not so successful, and some have taught me harsh lessons, and some have taught me, go with your gut instinct and trust the people that are in your network. So look, there's lots to discuss, there's lots to share, and I think that's the important part. I know that's a very long 30 seconds, so apologies.
No, it's great. And I just want to correct you in one aspect of that, where, Bryan Redpath says he doesn't cold call people. You actually cold called me last year and said... or it was the kind of what year are we, 2025? Listen, it's what we were saying off air. We're getting old, can't even remember what year it is.
No, I can't remember
the 2025 version of cold calling, when Bryan Redpath sent me a message on LinkedIn saying, Scott, do you have any interest in FX? Just like that. That was cold calling, mate.
It was cold calling. It's just not 300 or 400 a day like the ones in the offices have to do.
No, quite, yeah. And listen, just on that. So if if we were to kind of bring your dad into this call, would your dad said our Bryan, the FX trader, our Bryan, the joiner, or our Bryan, the rugby player?
It was our Bryan, the wee pest that used to get away. Had the knack of not getting caught at causing trouble with my brothers and my sister. So, yeah, no, I mean, I guess they'll always see me as the border joiner that played rugby. They don't necessarily ask too much what I do now. As I say, they're more, they're in their 80s now, so they're more like looking after themselves and not really worrying. As long as I'm okay, I think that's all they'll ever worry about, and that's the way I want it to be. Yeah. Both my brothers and my twin sister are scattered around in the world, and I think it's families are there, to look after each other in the time of need, and not always just be there in each other's pockets and be needy around them. I'm that kind of person. If they need anything, I'll help, but I won't be the one that phones every week. That's just not me, and I care for them deeply, but I don't necessarily need to speak to them every week.
Yeah, it's good that you've got something that's obvious, so whether it's joiner or rugby, because I'll tell you now, my mum and dad, if we brought them into this call, have never understood a thing I've done for 35 years in industry. And I'm sure when they talk to friends and family and they say, what does your Scott do? And they say, he lives down south.
And I can say that now, and they say, he does something with money. don't really know what it is. And he does some coaching, not very well, because they're bottom of the league, he'll say as well. I'm very, very fortunate. I've had a very supportive family, and I think that's important. And it's never easy for families, I think, and especially being in a sporting world, because played with my brothers for Melrose. They all played for Melrose, played for the South. I toured with my middle brother Craig. He sat on the bench in the Grand Slam game in 1990 and got his cap in '93. So we've done a lot together as brothers. Now my twin sister emigrated in '93 to New Zealand. So these things have always been there for mum and dads to pick up the pieces of the hardships of playing and then winning and losing and criticism, and because people underestimate how cruel it can be. You can play a test match and they could be walking around someone. And someone will say, well, I don't rate that Bryan Redpath. Why is he playing? And sometimes they hear that and they have to get on with it. So it affects everyone sometimes, and that's sometimes a wee bit that is the hard part. And that's why coaching is so difficult, because the highs and lows, and not everyone can be a Pep Guardiola that wins all the time. And suddenly then he has challenges and you see weaknesses in the armour of a Liverpool or a Man City or a Man United. And because I look at all sports, I look at the Ryder Cup, I look at the cricket with the Ashes. Everyone's got talent. It's just what comes out on the day at that time and how long it can persist and how long it can stay in that top end sport. It's not easy.
Yeah. And maybe that's a good place to start and we talked about this again when we chatted a couple of weeks ago about this. I think you talked about rugby IQ and that kind of instinctive, ability to be really good at something and how that plays into coaching. And again, you've got quite a broad range of coaching of sporting interests, and you also you've come through a very interesting phase of rugby. And again, it's an age thing where you went through the professionalism when we turned professional and everything else. So do you think we're losing that ability to read the field in life the same way as in sport because we rely on technology too much? And this is quite fundamental to what I'm trying to do here in the third half and the tech ledger before. Is just think about how technology impacts all aspects of our lives.
Yeah, massively. I think as the humans in this whole development or scale where the game needs to go, or a sporting environment, or business in general, or life needs to go, is we have technology that can improve this athlete. So I can improve the athlete massively. I can get them fitter, stronger, faster, to a certain extent faster, but the strength and the fitness, and pay him to take all his time to potentially focus on rugby. But I still think there's a heck of a lot missed in the early years where you pick up the IQ, you play in different conditions, you play against different people, you play more. Playing in a park is like playing on a Saturday on the pitch. It's just a park. It's just, we don't have anything like that as much. So suddenly you learn a lot from playing British Bulldog, where he's big, so I'm not going to be he slows him down, I'll try and finish it off. And ultimately, you look at that as a British Bulldog world. Then you look at the real world of what rugby is now. It's full of powerful athletes. And 96, when we turned professional, 97, 98, it suddenly became, this people were getting bigger and more physical. But then when you become full-time at it, you watch the game you're involved in, and then you get ingrained in this environment where I'm rugby, conditioning, diets. You can't do the social side, so you change your social group. Then do you actually watch the game as much? There is students of the game still there. I watched George Ford, a student of the game. Everyone's is complimenting. He's not a big man, but he plays smart. He plays for the team. He steers the team around. And I'm the same. You look at Finn Russell. I use these examples as players that are icons right now and global rugby players. But they've both got great IQ. They've both individual instinct. So Finn can play like he did in the park. It looks like he plays like he does in the park. George Ford and Owen Farrell, they've come up with sporting environments through their parents and their brothers and their dads, and suddenly their IQs, because rugby was on the TV every day. I still think that a lot of players miss out on this What do they watch when they're not playing or training? Do they watch somebody and say, well, how does he do this? How did they do that? And then I watch them. He doesn't like this. It becomes a common theme rather than you telling me I go to training and Brian, this is what your winger does. This is what he's not good at. This is like great. But I might have just been able to watch that myself and then come in and analyse that myself. So that's maybe too deep, but I think as it's a little bit of it's an overkill because, right, let's get the biggest, the strongest, and the fastest, and let's teach them rugby. The hardest part is the rugby. Because that's the bit that changes. That's the bit that there's a referee in the middle. That's the bit that the condition changes. It's wet, it's windy, it's rainy. It's the team's changed. We've gone down to 14 men. I've got a niggle. Like, what part of that does the strength and condition prepare you for?
Yeah.
So when I say rugby IQ and sporting IQ, I think it's the people that watch and understand the game the most and then have the ability mentally to bring it to life or to share it. And that's the bit you want to see is you want someone to buy in, and you do have an opportunity to say, I don't really understand that. I'm not very good at that. But the ego in everyone is, I'm not saying that because it's virtually he's going to pick somebody else because I've just admitted that I'm not good at defending at this area. I'm not good at kicking. I'm not. So you tend not to share too much. So I think it's a real challenge. But the development in the world we live in has created the challenges of the IQ of players.
So it's quite interesting, isn't it? Listening to that you do you play to the if I was a player playing out and and hitting at top levels, which your Cam obviously is, do you stick to that instinctive old-fashioned values? And you've played under many a coach through many different generations of rugby, and you actually you mentioned people like Jim Telford and stuff like that. Possibly you might disagree with me here, but possibly one of the greatest coaches ever. And you think about Telfer sitting down with a dashboard and a bit of tech trying to help people. So the next generation players, do they adhere to some of those old-fashioned values that Telfer would instilled, or do they have to kind of play to the crowd, as it were, and get into tech and dashboards and micromanagement?
Yeah,
and actually, and how do you? How has your coaching evolved over the years to balance both those sides?
Yeah, I think the early days you got McGeechan, a Telford, a Rob Moffat, a Gel Tate when I was at Melrose, like these people that were influential in my approach to training and my approach to the game. So my approach and my determination or my commitment or my understanding, that's what I needed to have. And then what you would do is the technology would allow you then to look now at the modern world where you're analysing everything. Every minute, every touch the opposition I have, everything's analysed. Can you go off script? Because the defensive sides are so good now, you need a structure to break them down, but you need to have someone that's got the ability to use the structure, but to have an individual skill set to come out of that. Not everyone needs that. There's certain players need to just say, right, that's what I am really good at, so I'm just got to do that. And then it gets to a stage where you can't not pick me because nobody's doing it, and I can do that for 80 minutes. And that it might not look flash. You might never even see it, but on the videos, when you see on the stats, when you see how many tackles, how many carries, how many meters he's covered, how much he's working on the inside and or the outside, or he's working the threes, or he's doing his scrum or his maul, or his kicks are always on the money. It's just like there's so much you can measure. It's great, but you still need this instinct. You still need this inner drive. You still need this ability to take it to somewhere. And then if you make an error, you don't compound it. You don't do it again and then think, oh, well, and then again, and then think, well, if I keep doing it, I'll get it right. Well, maybe analyse what you did pre-tackle, pre-carry, just the little things to say, well, actually, this is what I need to work on. This is what I need to change. And the game has gone to an extreme level of analysis, and that's probably, has it gone too far? Yes, sometimes, but I also know that coaches use it in a wise way as well, where you saying, I can use the stats. He's missed 6 out of 11 tackles. He's had 3 errors. He's had 2 offloads that have gone to the floor, and he's in the wrong position. He's chasing tackle. He's chasing ruck. So you're going, well, I'm not picking him based on the stats.
Yeah.
So as a coach, you have a lot of tools to use, But if you've got a player, what do you want? You want my honest feedback, not my technical feedback. So you mirror both, and that can become heated because we become emotional. You become emotional around your performance. I'm emotional because we're lost, and I've got 16,000 Gloucester fans baying for my blood because we've lost, and it's all my fault. And then they've got a player there that's making the same errors, and I keep picking them, and then I drop them, and then how do you come back from it? So look, there's good in it, but there's also some challenges that lie around it.
Yeah, no, I get that. And how have you, just if we move into the kind of business world, and when you took off your dirty old boots and shorts and had to put on a shirt and tie, or maybe you didn't, you just wanted to get
had a shirt and tie, suit on.
And how have you taken those learnings from the field into the world of business? And also, I want to touch on, and I know we said the other week that you do coaching, you do a bit of business coaching, and you also work with some young entrepreneurs in business as well. So I'm quite interested in that switch of a lifelong of learnings down the paddock and on the pitch into that kind of like next phase of working in industry. And
I see every business as a small team anyway. Now, whether you're working as a sales team, whether you work as a marketing team or a compliance team or a senior leadership team within the business. And probably one of the biggest differences I've always noticed is the senior leadership with the most knowledge doesn't generally filter down as much. Because we employ someone to be the head of the sales team, be ahead of the marketing team, be head of that compliance team, and they do it, and then they get to the boss. But sometimes hearing it from the very top of the tree and he's willing to share, or she's willing to share, all the way down to the cleaner that says, the values that we rock up in is why you keep leaving your dirty cups on the table. Like, what does that make any difference to our business? Well, it makes a difference to the people that come in the evening that make your office and your desk look nice. And then why should you let them clean that up? And then you suddenly go, oh, well, there's a bit of respect here. I'll give them that. And then when you move around, I'm going to meet up with Scott today, have a chat to him. Scott's got a really good business. What does his business need? Well, actually, I might take time to pay attention to it and listen to it and then try and find a solution. Or I'll say, I'll overpower you and I'll go, well, this is what we're selling. This is what you should do. This is what it is. And I've no idea what you're going through. I don't know how many bad experiences you may have had. How many good ones are you've moved business, you've had a new challenge in your life, you've got personal, there's so much more. Whereas in sport, it tends to show straight in the front of your face when someone's in a tough time, or selection, week to week selection. So there's 4 times a month that you're going, oh, are you happy? And you've got a game, and then you've got a happiness again, or a downside, and you can fix it. Whereas in a business, you could go on a contract for 6 months and say, we've been still trying to win this contract. And there's so many other moving parts. So I think what I've noticed is some of the people at the top of the trees don't necessarily share on the way down. Causes another 25,000 accountants that are trainees. There is another 25 scrum halves, 1,000 scrum halves that are going to fill this week. So you have to put your faith in the 4 and 5 that you've got on the food chain. And that's the bit that I would say the filtering down, and then the ability to bring them up to a level and let them fly. But you will always win. I said this to you a couple of weeks ago was, I am willing as a coach and a senior player to share. But I was picking up the weaknesses of them as they were sharing. I was then using it as my knowledge bank to say, well, he doesn't like that. So if I do have a chance to play for him because he's competing for my position, I might have to turn this game into somewhere where he doesn't like.
Yeah.
Even though I would have been supporting him on the things that he's not so good at, because I would still work at them and still be really good at them. He found these hard, so then he'd only get to there. I would still be here. So I would then come down to there to find out all the good and the bad, but I still had this. So was I smarter than anyone else? No, not at all. I was just, because I was smaller and I was in that different stage of it. So I had to look at different ways to communicate, to understand, and then to see where I did fit in. And if I didn't fit in, that was a coach's choice, that was a CEO's choice, or a CFO's choice, or an MD to say, he's not for us, he's not willing to do that.
Yeah.
And at the times, that does come in your time as your career as well. As you look at when you're young and you're, fired up, you'd fight with anything and you take on any challenge, then Into your 30s, you kind of ease down, and at your 40s, you tend to, you're settled. Into your 50s, you're thinking, geez, I could be the first one out the door because they're what, young.
Yeah.
Then how do I get a new job? So yeah, I'm in this end bracket here where not many people want 54-year-olds as a new business. But on the other side, I've got a lot to share, a lot to give. So some of the startups, I'm trying to do a little bit of support with are great. I don't need to be paid for them all the time right now. It's not always about money. It's you give something, you'll get something in return down the line.
Yeah, I love that. And we touched on something the other week that I think is really important as well, which is that whole teamwork aspect. And again, translating that from the dressing room to the business world. And I think you touched on something that says, listen, you don't need to sit around and like everybody that's in the changing room, because that would be somewhat an oddity in itself, but you have to have their back. You have to know when to support them. And then we touched on the kind of mental health aspect as well. And again, you haven't seen so many aspects of the game. And let's be honest, rugby's a big manly game where nobody really opens up about their weaknesses emotionally or otherwise. So I guess taking some of those learnings and translating that into the business world as well is a boon for you.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, that in the sporting world, under the challenges you have, you tend to open up more. You tend to share more of your challenges, your weaknesses, your personal, your real you.
Yeah.
Exposed. Now, not everybody wants to share these because they're emotional, they're challenging. Some people hate showing emotion, or they can't show emotion. Some of them show it too much and they can't control it, and then it creates just mayhem. In rugby terms, it creates a scrap in training, or there's a dust up because somebody can't control themselves. And it's what's going on in their personal life, or it's going on in selection, or it's going, well, you tell me I'm not physical enough, so what part do you want? And if I look at that in the business world, why have you not done this today? I asked you to do it. Why have you not done it? Why have you not fulfilled that? Have you called them? No, I haven't called them. Have you chased up in that email? Yeah, but we have no idea what their personal life's going through. So suddenly we're going, oh, geez, I've just lost his family member, or he's moved home, he's split up from his long-term girlfriend or a boyfriend, and you start to understand there's a bit more to this. So if you look into this a wee bit more and find out more about the person, then you might find out a bit more about the person that wants to work for you, or you want to work for him or her. And I think that's I think females tend to share a wee bit more. I say you're big, egotistical, I am big man, here it is. I've not got a sensitive side, and that's the ones that we don't need.
Yeah.
All the time. Now, we need to be strong on many occasions, but there's times where you need to be in an environment where we ask more and ask more and share more. Yeah. And not see it as a weakness, see it as a strength to us all, and that's a bit that I think sport teaches you really, really well. And then when you go into there and you see someone and you ask a question and, how are you? You all right? You fancy going for a beer or a juice? You don't have to have a beer nowadays. You know what I mean? It's a lot of youngsters don't drink at all, or people have had challenges before. So in our day, back in the day, it was get a pint in you and drink one and drink 10, and then have a pie and then have a fish supper on the way home. So you're like, you got to do that. Whereas now, you don't have to do that. If you don't want to drink, don't drink. If it doesn't show the true reflection of you, don't do it. If it makes you feel ill, don't do it. So there's many ways of us finding out in the business world what works for our colleagues, and it can be different. Have you the ability to be that way one person and then within 30 seconds be another way? Because that's the real challenge, is one size doesn't always fit all. Yeah. And it's old saying, square pegs and round holes. And as a coach, you asked me earlier, what changed in my coaching was, well, everyone's different. So I've got to have the ability and have a big enough staff group that actually can facilitate 50 players. And can we deal with these? Because we need to have different people that can deal with that. I can't deal with this. It's not. I'll try, but I'm too emotional, or I'm not engaged. I just want to sit back and listen, and that frustrates somebody. Well, why are you not talking up? Why are you not telling him he's not done the right thing? Well, it's not my job to. I'm doing my job. You're asking me to do your job for you.
Yeah.
So if you like, and again, it's not that technical. It's just how I dissect it in my head to come across or to function in an office space where I don't really know anyone, and actually they don't really want to know me, and they might have a pre-perception of me from the sporting world. So instantly I'm like juggling, thinking, what is it? Do I go and Billy Big Bullocks? And you're like, wait. Yeah. Or do you go in nice and calm and you sit back and you share and you listen, or you don't share anything? So there's many ways like you come away from a lot of things, I think, thinking more about myself than I do thinking about others. And then that sometimes can be good and sometimes can't be.
So the perception of you from the sporting world would probably be bloody annoying, because I've never known a 9 or a 10 that's never been anything other than bloody annoying.
Angry.
I can say that as a man who occasionally played 8 or 4 or 5. You know, like you guys, the uber annoying prima donnas always annoying people around the pitch.
Well, the thing is that the 10s are more prima donnas than the 9s got. I was closer to them, so.
True.
I was like, oh damn, I'm getting it, you know. And then I had people that were mentors of mine. GLT, Gary Armstrong was a competitor of mine, but I admired him massively, and Greg Oliver. And to play for the South of Scotland back in the day, I had to beat them two, and they were the current scrum halves for Scotland.
Yeah.
They were playing for Hoyk and Jed. Now, there was no way that I was going to get in that South of Scotland team or the Scotland team if I was soft, if I was not willing to be gritty, to be competitive. And then you learned that there was fights in there that you're not going to win, but you thought, well, I can't back down, I've got to try and win it somehow, or win this battle somehow, or win this contest somehow. But it can't be for me just backing down and being expecting sympathy or anything, because nobody's going to give you it. And that's generally what the borders kind of taught you, is care who you are or what you are. There's an element of stand up for your own self. And if you can't stand up for yourself, think of how you can do it. Think of how you can cope.
Yeah.
So that's a bit. And like I say, I had a few nicknames in my time, yeah.
Probably just one or two. And just thinking about entrepreneurs, because again, I find this fascinating, translating between a big squad of, I don't know, 50 players, 30 players, whatever, 15 on the pitch, and then industry, big teams. But you're working with some, as you say, startups, entrepreneurs, where it's a team of 1 or 2, and like, has that been, again, interesting, reflective for you in terms of thinking, how do it's an audience of 1, it's a team of 1, it's a coach of 1.
It's the young girl I'm doing some support structure for, and she's looking at a clothing brand that she's doing for girls, for female sports girls. And she's amazing of what she's achieved at 24 years of age already. And if she gets it right, she'll smash it. But again, it's not necessarily me. I have the sporting connections that I can share with her and introduce her to. But at the end of the day, it's her idea, it's her dream, it's her vision that's going to win investment. It's going to, our rounds of investment she's going into, then the commercial side she's going into. And I think it goes back to just having good people around. And when I first sat down with her and she was saying that this is her dream, this is what it is. And I'm like, well, it should never be anybody else's dream. It is yours. And let's try and make it come to life. But be careful, because along the way, there's going to be many people in this journey because of what you've got and, what I think you potentially have in this clothing sort of sector for yourself. I think is great. It's great, and if you get it right, I hope to be in my 60s sitting there and seeing you smash it, and being very wealthy and supplying what the girls need at all sports, and that you're doing something that she found out in skiing, and then she wants to take that to rugby and to golf and hockey and cricket, and she wants to take it everywhere. So, but there's a process, and there's a process in that part that she just needs people around her, not just me. There's many others, and the investors that she's gone out and found that's invested in the business, that's handpicked to understand what she needs, that have experience in that industry, because that's what she's going to need. And she's going to be careful of the people that are taking too much out of her time and then chunks of the business.
So I love that. it's your dream. It's nobody else's dream. I think, every young.
You have to have dreams. You have to have something new. We all have dreams. Like you walk along the road and you could have dreamt of being, a Scotland #8 with you and John Jeffrey in the back row, and you could have had a great time. Finlay Calder, Scott Hamilton, and John Jeffrey.
Oh, mate.
I don't know how many times you thought of that, but anyway, I can just imagine it. But we all had little dreams in our world, and they can be any size. They can be shared, they can be kept, and they can be stored away. And whatever that dream or that successful point is, it could be to run the podcast. It could be to achieve something through an illness you've suddenly had, and you want to achieve something. You want to do what Sarah Cox has just done. You want to do what Kev Sinfield's doing. I think he started yesterday, 7 ultramarathons again in 7 days and 7 different parts. And you're like, whatever that is that you feel you've achieved, it doesn't matter. It could be walk to the end of the road because you've not done that because of a disability. So I just think make it yours and really, really enjoy it and enjoy the little wins in that.
Yeah, I love that. My dream when I was playing for Heaton Moor Seconds was to be in the back row with John Jeffrey and Finlay Calder. But actually, the reality was, if I ever get to play for the first.
Anyway, we just need somebody with blonde hair and somebody that was mental. So you had JJ with the blonde and Finlay that was a bit mental. So
absolutely,
we had plenty of them.
So listen, this has been amazing. I've got some quick fire questions for you just to sort of finish off here, and I'll throw them out at you and see where we go. So, Bryan Redpath, outside of FX and coaching and everything like that, what gets you excited and what do you still love to do that might be a surprise for some of our listeners here?
I enjoy doing cold plunges in the morning now. One of the guys I work with at London Scottish called Joe Gray, an ex-former player for Harlequins and Saracens and Northampton. He set up his own business called My Own Master, and he is flying. He's killing it. Him and his wife Lottie are smashing it, and they do rehab recovery equipment. So they have a Myo Ice, it's called. So you jump in it at 5 degrees. You have a pump that keeps it at 5 degrees every single day. So I actually do really enjoy jumping in there. I love my golf, and I still enjoy training. I still enjoy that feeling of knowing that I'm going to the gym at 5:45 at night, and I'm going to try and get my heart rate as high as I can, and for about 30 minutes. And if I can get to 200, then I'm happy. And my wife thinks I'm an absolute loony bin. So my love of it is, I like to try and keep us healthy. We all have injuries and knocks and aches and pains that we try and maintain. So if I can maintain them for longer, then I'll feel better.
Good for you. My wife of 30 years thinks I'm mental. And whenever my wife says something like that, I always think, well, you're the one that's still here 30 years later.
Exactly. She's super mental.
And, okay, on your Spotify listening when you're down the gym, what are you listening to? As a man from Cheshire, is it all kind of like late 80s indie music, or are you an old crew?
There is a huge mixture of the Jam, there's AC/DC, there's Run Rig, there's Paolo Nutini, I've got everything that's like from here to there. Sometimes it's just a shuffle, and it's just anything. Some of it's Scottish stuff. There's old Scottish ones that I like that make me think when I'm going to struggle, I want a song that comes on that reminds me of the younger days, the times when I had to fight and I had to challenge and I had to dig in, and I like that. There's old bits of songs, whether you have the Caledonias of the world, that you sit and you go, oh, I just need this to get me through the next 3 minutes of this bike or this row machine or this skier. So yeah, I love all music. I think is a brilliant mental release for you. And whether I'm walking the dog or whether I'm just needing to think or I'm out on a bike or I'm doing something, the music is what triggers me back to the memories of a good day or a good time in my life. Because there is bad times in your life that you have a song that you remember and you think, oh, that was a shit day. Yeah. And other ones that that was a good day. I remember that good day. I loved that time. I remember the fun we had. It might be a night out. It might be a Christmas. It might be a summer tour somewhere, or it might just be sitting having a beer in the back garden with somebody and remember that time. I remember that song, So I have a huge mix of songs that I wouldn't say there was one that I loved more. I've got some Bruce Springsteen stuff I love, and there's different ones. There is obviously a massive mix.
It's a massive list. All right, and quick answer as a proud Scotsman who's played in France, is it Scottish cheddar or French brie?
French brie.
Oh. Everybody in Scotland's going, oh, you better get that Caledonian back on pretty soon.
Exactly, but it's just the wine, the cheese, the baguettes. Really, there's so much over there that when we were there, I was thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. Then you've got the sunshine on the beach 6 kilometres away. Yeah, there was some lovely Sundays spent in the summer like that.
That's an extra 20k on the bike right there. And final question is, as I said to you the other week when we were chatting, Andy Gummershaw was my first guest on the Tech Ledger as it was then, and now the third half. Did you play opposite Andy? And was he one of the most annoying people you played opposite, or was he a good guy?
He was a good bloke, actually. I liked Gummers. Yeah, he a great passer of the ball as well, and I was kind of the similar thing. Very good passers, and he was one of the best ones around. Like in England, it's a challenge when you've got obviously Matt Dawson, and he's got Kieran Bracken, and he's got Austin Healy. Had a dabble in there, but then didn't last too long. Got pushed out to the wing, which is the best place for him. Again, he was annoying, but a very good player as well. Yeah, no, Gummers is a good lad. There was a crew of boys that played for Wasps were really good boys, and that's the Simon Shaws, obviously Kenny Logans, your Tom Voices, your Phil Vickery eventually moved there after Gloucester, but then your Big Lawrence. There was a lot of good boys. Paul Saki, there was a lot of good people. Kingy, Wasps had a really good group, and Gummers was in that mix, and. Then Rob Howley went there as well. Matt Dawson went there as well. So, that Gummers was a good bloke, very good lad. And I'm glad that he had time and he took time to chat with you. And sometimes, the perception is different. And I think some of the English boys are good lads.
Yeah. I might need to edit out some of that last bit there, Brian. I don't know about Gummers and the English.
But there's some good lads there, okay.
But there's some good lads here, aye. Bryan Redpath, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you here. When I think back to those days when you were playing for Scotland, and am I right in saying that you were part of the team that beat the Springboks, weren't you? Like back in the day, is that right?
Yeah, in 2002, yeah. And we should have beat them in 2003 as well. Yeah. 94, we beat them as well. Scotland A game it was, though, at Melrose, actually, and Fergus Wallace scored, but... Yeah, there was many times playing against Africa. Like, we beat them in 02, 21-6, and it was a wet day. It was a horrible day. We got under their skin massively as a group. Budge Pountney and people like that we were on them non-stop. And then we could wind up the boy Butch James playing. We could wind up him. Dalton was playing, and suddenly we got on their nerves, and then we coped with it set piece wise your Tom Smiths, your Bruce Douglas. It was an amazing set piece effort to win the game, and it was back in the day. There's lots of good memories, and people ask me about them a lot. And there's many times that was enjoyable and tough as well. There's many times where it was sad and you had bad days, and there was some tears in the changing room or in the toilet where you had to trap yourself away and kind of try and forget about being dropped or taken off. Or there's lots of things in there that were challenging, but 99% of it is joy, and anyone that says what's the most enjoyable thing you've done in your life is represent your country. You walk out and 60,000 people, you 80,000 people, it doesn't matter where it is and what part of the world, Scottish people came and supported you. So when they ask you what you really loved, like, that was it. Nothing will ever come close to that.
Brilliant. And it's great to see that you're bringing those lessons to industry and to young entrepreneurs and young people as well, whether it's coaching or in business, I say. So, Bryan Redpath, thank you very much, and I will let you get on with the rest of your day now.
Cheers, Scott. Thank you very much, and a pleasure, buddy. Take care.